Hello, welcome to episode 13 of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. If you're playing this back later at a later time, welcome. If you're with us live on Zoom or YouTube, you get to participate by submitting your questions and comments in the Discord. And I'm sorry, but I am getting a double audio. And let's try this.
You're good, by the way. We're all good.
If you're with us live on Zoom, you can participate in the post-show where we can have a casual conversation and questions and answers. You can find the Zoom and Discord registration information on our Facebook page. This growing international and multi-faith community is you, of course, representing congregations of all sizes. At the technical level, denomination is transparent. We all want to communicate with our communities and do it as effectively as we can. And we are but one in a related set of communities. Leo on our panel here hosts a show on Sunday afternoons at 3 o'clock Eastern Time that is more focused on Jewish worship. Except this weekend, when Leo has other commitments and we'll skip the show this week. Stop by next week for details. If you're an educator at any level, a teacher or administrator, interested in technology for educators, you'll want to check out office hours on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And there are several other shows that some of our panelists also participate in, dedicated to various media production technologies. You can look for links in the Discord under related shows. And all of these are interactive communities because it's not just you learning from the hosts, we're all learning from each other. The information you share during these shows and on their Discords helps everyone in the community. This interactive engagement is more than half of the community's value. Engage in active discussions, information sharing, questions and answers with each other and with our panelists all week long. You'll also find future show agendas, past show recordings, and special announcements. And Discord is where we take your questions during our live show, like right now. You can ask a question anytime during the show. Just write it in the channel named Live Questions. And if you'd like to comment or add to something that you hear, put it in the show chat channel so that we can keep questions easier for us to find. You'll find both of these channels under the category named Live Show. And speaking of questions, it's time for the question of the day. So later in the show, we're going to be talking about room acoustics in amplified rooms and loudspeakers. So the question is, in your opinion, and on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being a little and 5 being a whole lot, how much can room acoustics affect a listener's ability to understand speech? So on a scale of 1 to 5, how much can acoustics affect a listener's ability to understand speech? Put your answers in the question of the day channel. Now, in addition to our Thursday show, we have some additional training opportunities for you. Audio training continues on Monday afternoons at 3 o'clock Eastern Time with Mark Plukas. What are you going to be talking about this week, Mark?
That's an excellent question. We covered microphones. This week we're going to be covering processing, and it's broken into 2 basic groups, dynamics and effects. And we'll be talking about both of those topics in general terms. And in the case of some of the processing, we'll be talking in specific terms, what each knob does.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Looking forward to that. Check the announcements channel in Discord for other training opportunities and when they come up. And if there's something in particular you would like to work on, let us know. So now, we have a distinguished panel of experts here across a broad range of fields, from consultants to engineers to church volunteers to music directors and musicians. And I know that there are a lot of people watching here who are both knowledgeable and dedicated to working on or volunteering to help with worship technologies. So if you'd like to contribute to the panel discussions, then all you need to do is get here an hour early on Thursdays We'll let people in to join the panel or just to listen in on our sound check and preparations between 6 o'clock and 6:40. And at 6:40, we'll finalize the panel and everybody gets to listen in. And if you want to get a behind the scenes look at or even participate in our planning process, then join us here on Sundays at 4:30 Eastern Time. Same Zoom place, same Zoom channel. We can get into some fascinating discussions, so come and join us. Now, attendee microphones are muted throughout the show until the post-show, when we'll have an informal and open question and answer session and casual discussion. Now, remember that we don't use the Zoom or chat features. We take questions on our Discord channel in the live questions. And if you'd like to comment on something we say without asking a question, comments and chats are welcome in the Discord live chat channel. And we do read it and we do reply during the show. And finally, if you're new to Discord and would like a tutorial, let us know and we can schedule a time for you. So today we'll be presenting the needs assessment that we completed for our first contest winner in the under 100 seat category, the Lake Chapala UU Fellowship in Mexico. Next week's agenda is open for your requests. I meant to publish a poll to ask you guys what you'd like us to talk about, but I didn't get to it. So let us know there in the Discord. There's a channel for show requests. Now, before we get to it, I want to thank our panelists today: Joanna Lovell in Pennsylvania, Jay Paul in Maryland, Mark Plukas in Massachusetts, Leo Mindale in London, and Crystal Vokes and Robert McKinnon both in Florida. And from our guest congregation today, we have Matt Alspa. Thank you very much and welcome. So on April 8th, we interviewed Matt's team and had our roundtable discussion as we began to formulate our recommendations for enabling hybrid worship at their church and how it could be used. Tonight, we're very pleased to present our preliminary proposal. And all of the information and pictures that Matt provided us gave us a really good sense of their congregation, their space, their ministry style, and their goals for hybrid worship. I still think we need to do a site visit, though. But what makes this preliminary, our presentation, is that there are still many details left to work out, as you'll see. So let's have a discussion. I need to work out a little technical issue, so if somebody else could take over the conversation for a minute, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Surprise.
Don't give me an open mic.
The techs have to tech. I mean, that's a shocker.
Talkers talk. I'm a talker. Well, Matt, why don't you share really quickly what your role is at your congregation?
Needs to unmute.
Yeah, you need to unmute. And then we'll hear you. There we go.
Okay, great. So I am the minister of the congregation, part-time minister, and prior to entering ministry, you know, a whole bunch of us are retread, second career kind of folks. I did work in technology, and so some of this has been kind of fun to return to, even in time of COVID.
I noticed
you yeah,
that with some of this, only some of this has been fun. What do you find challenging about what you're doing?
You know, we have kind of cobbled together stuff here that we could assemble. Part of the game is things are a little more difficult to obtain in Mexico and somewhat more expensive. But there are trade-offs. The labor involved, we expect, will be significantly cheaper than in the U.S., and some of the actual installation activity will be, I think, a good bit easier. We've been very fortunate to have a lot of folk in the congregation who have been interested in helping out on this. We have a really strong tech team, as well as a strong, Sunday service committee kind of thing. So it's been a major part of how we've kept going during this time. And we're really looking forward to what that transition might look like as we move into hybrid, or what's multi-format. I think there's another word people are using for it.
Hybrid, digital
The,
first.
the
virtual.
UU is specifically coming back and calling it multi-platform.
There you go.
Multi-platform, yeah.
Yes.
Crystal, you dropped the link to the document that we're going to present to Matt
That
in
is correct.
Discord. Which channel in Discord did you put that link?
That can be located in the show chat channel under the live show section. So
Awesome. So everyone can take a peek at that and pull that up so you can review it at your own pace.
or if you want to be surprised, just follow along with us.
All right, I'm back.
And for those who are not in the Discord, I did put it in the Zoom chat.
Very kind of you, Mark.
But you should be in Discord, really. That's where all the fun is.
If you want to be with the cool kids, you should be
Yes.
over in the Discord.
Thank you very much. I was able to find out why I was hearing everybody twice and several seconds apart. Okay, which can be very disconcerting. You know, it's one of those things that it's a Zoom thing. Actually, it's a Zoom and YouTube thing. But I figured it out. Thank you for the fill in. My apologies for the delay. All right, so getting back to it, and you know, again, thank you, Matt, for being here. This has been a real pleasure to work on, and I hope that you get as much out of it as we did. So,
Well, great, thanks.
Yeah. So the first thing we talked about, and the very first item on our priorities list, is internet service, and we talked about the fact that your internet service, as you told us, was a little bit spotty, a little bit unreliable, and that's something that you know you're gonna have to find a way around. Sometimes you can buy two different services, two different accounts, preferably from two different service providers in your area if they are available. So even if you have two different rather unreliable service providers, the chances of them both going down at the same time is at least half, right? Other than that, there are, you know, you can try and rely on broadband services. You know, that gets a little sticky, but that's something that perhaps somebody who's more local and familiar with the area can help you with, or we can have an offline discussion about your options. So we did recommend upgrading to the highest speed of service that would be available to you, and upgrading your local hardware, your router, and your switches to at least 1 gigabit Ethernet devices. And you might want to have a switch up at the front of the room in the rack, and you're definitely going to need one at the control desk in the back of the room, because you'll have a lot of devices, computers, mixing boards, video switchers, and such that will need to communicate over the local area network, and some of them over the internet as well. And then moving on to audio, our second hottest item on our priorities list, you're going to need an inventory, a variety of wired microphones to cover what you can reasonably expect to need for choir, vocalists, instruments, and the like. And, you know, we don't know what those needs are going to be, but we did come up with a kind of a list of recommended microphones. Now, these are very generalized list of reasonably cost and some low cost and some higher end microphones, depending on the application that we kind of identified. These are all very, very popular, good microphones that you can use for your application. So you can pick and choose from this list or others as you like. And then we get into wireless microphones. How many wireless microphones are you using now? Was it 3 channels?
We typically use 2, but occasionally there's an inferior quality third one that we'll pull in. I think it was a Pile brand. And I think we could perhaps increase that.
And we did not delve a query into the frequencies that they're working on and what frequencies are allowable in your neck of the woods. So when you do upgrade, and you probably want to upgrade to a 4-pack, so that could be, and I would recommend they be located at the front of the room in the rack. So that could be each rack device, each wireless device could have 2 channels in a single rack space or up to 4 channels in a single rack space if you want to save space. And they, those can work really well. We've listed a couple of examples of what we consider to be good quality wireless that would fill that need. And when you make that purchase, you can talk with the dealer about what frequencies would be good for your area. And if there happens to be a lot of wireless traffic in your area that could make frequency selection difficult, somebody can actually we can talk to you about doing a frequency survey that is trying to find out what frequencies are actually in use by other people in your neighborhood that would make wireless microphones difficult to use.
That might be a good Sunday morning activity. It is a bit of Church Central where we're at right now. So that's the likely source of interference.
Yes. So yeah, if you're in a neighborhood that has a lot of churches in it, you can reasonably anticipate that every one of them is using between 1 and 6 wireless microphones. And so we do always recommend, if you're going to do a frequency sweep, to try and find available frequencies, that you do it the same time, day of the week and time of the day that you would be wanting to use them, because wireless microphones are things that can pop up at any time, at any place, and they're never consistent. I mean, just like you're turning on your microphone, somebody down the street could be turning on their microphone at any time, which makes wireless kind of a hit and miss thing, right? It's the Wild West out there. There are no guarantees that any wireless will operate interference free, which is why we recommend wireless systems that are frequency agile, so that you can change frequencies when you need them. The next item is direct boxes, otherwise known as direct injection boxes. And these are electronic devices that allow you to plug an instrument like an electric guitar or something similar directly into the console without going through an amplifier and a microphone. And or you can also, if you are going to use a guitar amplifier or a keyboard amplifier or something similar, many of these amplifiers have direct outputs built into them. Some of them don't, and you would still go through a direct box. So these things allow the instrument or the amplifier to go into the mixer and properly match the voltages, the signal strengths, and the impedance, so that the level and the frequency response comes through properly. If you just try and plug a guitar right into a mixer, it may or may not work, and it may or may not sound the way you think it should sound. So a direct box is a way to help to ensure that it does, because it does that matching. So it's good to have a couple of these handy, and there are different kinds of direct boxes, some that use transformers, some that use batteries, so they're active or passive, whether they're powered or not, and with transformers and with different impedances. So it's good to have a selection, because you can have an instrument and plug it in using 2 or 3 direct boxes, and they will all sound different. So you want to have something that selection so that you can listen and find one that sounds the best for that instrument. And then microphones and direct boxes, they plug into a device at the front of the room, which is an input-output box, which is an extension of your mixer, and connects to the mixer using a Category 5 or Category 6 cable. You'll have 16 to 32 inputs available at the stage and 8 to 16 outputs from the mixer, and all of them travel over a single category cable, which makes them...
Marty, can I point out that I don't think your document is in the same place as where you're talking, what you're talking about right now. I can see mixer.
Right.
I thought you were on the I/O section. Never.
In our document, we listed the mixer first, so I'm
Okay,
going to...
sorry.
Yep.
Carry on.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'm just touching on what the I/O does, and then we'll get to the mixer. So yeah, the I/O unit at the stage connects to the mixer using a single category cable, so it's very easy to install. The cable is very inexpensive, and it's a digital extension of the mixer. So getting to the mixer itself, you want to have a mixer that has sufficient inputs and outputs that will have more capacity than you currently need. Why? Because you don't know what your needs are going to be down the road, and a mixer is something that you're going to use for somewhere between 5 and 10 years. So you want to plan for growth, you want to plan for expansion, you want to plan for other events such as wedding bands and rentals and other things like that. So and some of these direct boxes have instrument inputs to them, so you can plug in microphones, you can plug in instruments directly, and you may not need a direct box. So that depends on the particular input-output box that you select.
You mean stage boxes, Marty? You don't mean direct. The stage box you select.
Correct. Thank you, Leo. and don't be afraid to step in if I misspeak, or if I'm not reading something correctly. Feel free to jump in. And if you have any questions, this might be a good place so far. So we covered quite a bit of ground, microphones and such. Are there any questions for us, either from the panel or from the audience?
I want to point out that we'll be showing you a diagram of what of this all boiled down. It's interconnectivity, et cetera. What you're seeing in the document are a list of devices that would fit the bill, but there are some slightly more specific recommendations in the drawing that Marty will be showing you.
Right. Thank you, Mark. So when it comes to mixers, provided we don't have any other questions, when it comes to mixers, there's a choice of stuff, but since you're already using the Behringer XR12 and you're accustomed to that user interface, a natural choice would be the stepping up to the full X32 in the compact size. The X32 is probably the best-selling digital mixer in the world. When it was introduced quite a few years ago, it actually broke the entry price barrier. It was the least expensive digital mixer that actually performed and had the kinds of features that are needed for at least semi-professional work, if not professional work. But there are other options. So in the chart here, we list the Midas M32, which is essentially the same thing as, it's identical in software and operation to the X32, except it's built for professional applications. So it has a metal chassis instead of a plastic chassis. It has upgraded components such as the faders and preamps, and is more expensive accordingly. Some people like the way it looks. It looks a little bit different, but it operates exactly the same way. QSC has some interesting mixers, the Touch Mix in various sizes, the Yamaha TF series, the Allen and Heath QU series, and the Soundcraft UI24, which is a different kind of animal. It's a rack-mounted mixer that operates, you can operate through a tablet or a computer screen, desktop or laptop. Behringer has similar products. Yamaha has similar products as well.
So there were some comments in the feature that list that I'm curious about: reputation for HOW or Studer mic press.
HOW is House of Worship.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Allen Heath has been known to be chosen for lots of houses of worship, and
Okay.
a Studer mic pre is an old time studio, a very likable sound that comes from a mic pre. Studers were used a lot in recording studios, so I thought it was worth mentioning that they have Studer mic pre's.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, all of these mixers would be viable options, and all of them have been used in churches very successfully. You know, I've installed a whole bunch of X32s in a lot of churches. And where's my mouse? There it is. Now, when choosing a mixer, I mentioned choosing one in a suitable size that has sufficient number of inputs that exceeds what you would typically use. So when designing a system, we design them to operate day to day, every day. Things go easy when it's installed properly. But we really plan for the maximum usage, and the most difficult kinds of uses. Because we want them to be able to, we don't want to have you be found short when you need to do something that's out of the ordinary. Outputs are also important. And when we get to the diagram, we'll show you what we expect you'll need for outputs, and then you'll see how many are left on a typical board. So here we talked about I/O. So we're recommending an I/O, a stage box with 16 inputs and 8 outputs. That should be sufficient for you. In some of these systems, you can always add a second box, a second stage box if you needed to grow. So that's convenient and economical because you can buy this now, and if you need more, you can buy later. Which brings us to loudspeakers. So you have two JBL control model loudspeakers in the sanctuary, and considering the size of the room, and we didn't hear any complaints from you about feedback or audio issues, and so we think they're quite sufficient. Now we do recommend you have people seating outside the sanctuary. To the left and right, you have open doors and seating areas on both sides. And so we recommend 2 additional speakers, one for each of those areas, because there is no sound covering them right now. And we'll get to in a bit, when we get to video, oddly enough, we'll talk about how we propose to mount those speakers in a way that kind of protects them. Actually, it's worth mentioning now, we're gonna recommend flat panel televisions for viewing out in those outside areas, and these speakers can be mounted on the same roll around carts that those video monitors are mounted on.
Okay.
To drive those loudspeakers, you want to upgrade your power amplifier, and we're going to recommend 4 channels of power amplification, 1 for each speaker. And that gives you two flexibilities. One, to do a mix in stereo if you wanted to. So, and that's not as complicated as it might sound. Because it's a fairly small room, when you're mixing to mono and you've got a lot of things going on, things can tend to sound squished, like everything is on top of each other. If you have music and speech or music and voice, if you were to like just spread those out a little bit between left and right, doesn't have to be a whole lot in it. And, you know, it's just a matter of, well, the guitar players to the left of the stage, the singers to the right, the keyboard players, the singers in the middle, the keyboard players on the right. If you were just to do a little bit of panning, it makes the world of difference, clears things up. And so having different amplifiers for your left and right speakers enables you to do that. The other thing that 4 amplifiers will be able to give you is the ability to independently adjust the volume levels of the outside speakers. They don't necessarily want to be the same volume as the inside speakers. So you have that kind of flexibility, and you can have those mixed to mono because there will be only one speaker available to those people sitting in either left or right outsides. Stage monitor speakers. Now you have your music director is on stage playing an electronic keyboard, and he clearly needs to be able to hear the service and the minister and other musicians that are on stage. Now you have a choice between a stage floor monitor, floor wedge, or going with in-ear monitors. So you see like I'm wearing here. That would be a wireless system. It can be much less expensive than a wireless microphone system. In fact, there are a few that have just recently come out that are really, really affordable. And that way there's no loudspeaker on the stage that adds noise to the stage and gets into microphones and such. And he has his own personal volume control. He can make it as loud as he feels comfortable without disturbing other people on the stage. So that's an option. Then there could be 1, maybe 2 floor wedges, which are loudspeakers that sit on the floor of the stage that have an angle on them so that they're pointed up at a person standing in front of them, standing there with a microphone or playing an instrument. And that is so that they can hear the keyboard player, who may not even have an amplifier on stage, but is coming through the front of house loudspeakers. But other players need to hear them. Singer needs to hear them. Guitar player needs to hear the singer. Singer needs to hear the guitar player. So you'd have these floor wedges in front of these musicians, just loud enough so that they can hear what they need to hear. And they would require, now they could be powered speakers, like the power amplifier would be built in, or you can have another power amplifier in the rack. Those are 2 good options. Either one works. And if there are any questions coming in from the audience, Joe, please let me know.
Third option that Marty didn't really talk about is hotspots. Small powered loudspeaker, sits right in front of a person, can be moved around, sits on top of a mic stand. There are several manufacturers that make really good hotspots that are perfect for that kind of application. It also gives whoever is listening to that monitor the ability to change the tone a bit and change the volume to their own liking.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. So processing for the main speakers. So this is a really important thing because loudspeakers have different tonal qualities. You could plug loudspeaker A into the output of a mixer, then replace it with loudspeaker B and replace it with loudspeaker C, and they will not sound the same for different reasons. Not to say that any one of them are necessarily wrong or anyone is right, but they will be different. Now, which one is accurate? That's the question. And that's important when you're mixing for other people who are listening on other devices. So if you're just mixing for the room, you have tone controls and such on the mixer to make adjustments so that what you're hearing in the room sounds right to you. But if those speakers are, say, bass heavy, just naturally bass heavy, and that causes you to turn down the low frequency level control for the keyboard or something, when that signal goes out to the live stream, it's not going to have any bass in it because you've turned it down. But it sounds reasonable in the room, right? Because those speakers are bass heavy. So what you want to do is you want to have your speakers equalized so that they have a flat frequency response across the audible spectrum from lows to highs, which makes them neutral. So that when you're making tone adjustments for inputs, it sounds right in the room and it will be balanced going out to the stream. Now, many of these mixers have equalizers built into the output sections, and sometimes that's enough. Other times it's not quite enough, in which case we would add a device in the signal chain that sits just before the power amplifier that has a fair amount of processing to it, such as equalization. Depends on the mixer. The need for this device kind of depends on the mixer you choose. So when we get to that point, we can discuss that. Headphones are recommended because at the sound mixer, the person who is mixing for the room will often want to listen to an individual input and to listen for whether it's if they're trying to find a noise, if they're trying to find a feedback or a ringing or something doesn't sound right. You can put on your headphones and solo each individual input to try and isolate the problem, and then you know where it is. The other use for headphones is for the person who is mixing for the stream. You want to be able to listen to that mix because it's not necessarily the same thing that you're playing in the room. And we've talked about that a number of times before. So headphones, good quality headphones, because headphones also sound very different from one headphone to another. So you need to be able to trust what you're hearing.
Maybe Mark can address that a little bit more in the audio class as well.
That would be Jay.
On the list of topics.
Yep. Hearing assistance systems. So, you know, a lot of people these days have hearing challenges, and the Americans with Disabilities Act is one of a number of global policies that have been enacted and actually put into law that provides insurance and the assurance of inclusion for people with hearing challenges to be able to participate and hear in public discourse. So any public facility that has a sound system that is integral to the functionality of that room is required to have a hearing assistance system. In the United States, curiously enough, houses of worship are exempt from that law. However, statistically speaking, they also have the highest rate of compliance with the law.
And so, it's best practices to
and it is best practices.
Provide hearing assistance in any public format. So.
Right, especially in churches where you want to be inclusive and you want people to participate. So we've listed a couple of the major manufacturers of these systems. Now there are 4 different technologies that are available for hearing assistance system. We did not get into that here. We recommend that you talk with someone who is knowledgeable and experienced in listening assistance systems, because it is a specialty. And we can certainly talk to you about that later on.
And also, I've dealt with Listen Technologies. They're a fabulous company. They have great customer service, and they could totally walk you through what your needs are if you describe them. So just a phone call to their customer service.
Okay, great, great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's get to video. Now you have 3 cameras, and we took a look at those, and we agreed that they could be used at least as a starting point. And we talked about possible places that they could be permanently mounted along the back wall, or drop from the ceiling, or along the side walls. And it may take some trial and error, some experimentation for you to find the best camera angles to put these, and figure out which camera works best in each of those locations. And there are a few particular shots that you want to be sure to get. You want to get a head-on shot of the pulpit, of course. You want to get a side shot of the pulpit. You want to get a full stage so that you can have the entire spread for musicians and other people. You may want to get a medium shot of the music director, very important person to keep happy.
Mhm.
And you may want to get a medium shot of where that area of the stage where other musicians would stand. Now, that's a lot to ask for 3 cameras, which is why we do suggest that you get at least one pan-tilt zoom camera that will give you that flexibility to move it around and get different shots. And you can program them with presets, which makes it very easy to recall those presets for different camera positions. And then at any time later on, you can replace your fixed cameras with additional pan-tilt zoom cameras. We listed several good manufacturers to look at for pan-tilt zoom cameras, and we can talk with you later about these choices and budgets and what might be appropriate for you. Now, some of the differences that you want to pay attention to is what kind of interfacing capabilities, what kind of signals the cameras can output. A lot of cameras these days, your fixed cameras, for example, the cameras that you have, they have HDMI outputs. And you have a Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro switcher, which has HDMI inputs for your cameras. So it makes sense for any new cameras that you buy to be capable of HDMI. A lot of cameras are also coming with NDI capabilities, and sometimes you can use one or the other, and sometimes both, which might have some additional benefits. Now, HDMI has a limited length capacity. It's distance limited, depending on the kind of wire that you're using. And so you want to pay attention to that. If standard HDMI cables are good to maybe 30 feet, more advanced HDMI cables, copper-based cables, can go up to 50 feet, but they tend to be rather heavy, thick, and stiff. But you can get active cables. These are, they're kind of powered, but they don't need external power. They draw the power from the HDMI ports. And they tend to be very thin, very flexible, and they can go 75 to 100 feet. So depending on the length, the distance you need to go to, and that's wire length distance, not as the crow flies between the switcher and the camera, right? You want to choose your wire accordingly. Now, pan-tilt zoom cameras need to be controlled. So they're motorized, and you need to have a controller that controls them. You're using vMix now in software, which is a software switcher, and that has some pan-tilt zoom controls in it. However, we do recommend that you get a hardware controller, which makes it much easier to program those presets and much easier to access the camera controls for visual adjustments. So and that also frees up the person who is operating vMix from having to control those cameras. A second person could do that as an option. Now, the A10 Mini Pro switcher you have is a very fine, capable switcher. The vMix software is very fine and capable. We recommend you keep that. You have a projector in the room, so I think, so unless unless you need a brighter picture or a bigger size, then we can talk about upgrading the projector. But you can often get a brighter picture simply by replacing the screen, by choosing a better screen. Okay, so we didn't get into that very deeply. We can talk about that later if you need to, if you like to. So for the outside, we talked about additional flat panel televisions. I think that 55-inch screens should be sufficient. You can go larger if you like. We had to figure out a way. How are we gonna connect video to those televisions? And we'll talk about that in a bit. So, but there are some options. NDI is one option, and NDI is a digital video and audio networking protocol that the computer that's running vMix could actually output NDI directly. That goes to the Ethernet switch in the data network, and that could go over to where the televisions are, and you'd have a hardware box that decodes NDI, brings it down to HDMI that can plug into the TVs. That is one option. Another option is to come out of the computer with an HDMI output, go into a splitter, an HDMI splitter, and then run HDMI cables directly to the television sets.
Curious about the for a wireless solution comment on the heading there.
Yeah, we did discuss wireless solutions. I have some reservations about that. A number of reservations would be the video quality, the latency, because latency is going to be an issue.
Yeah, a worry.
And the reliability, because a lot of those operate in the same frequency band that Wi-Fi does.
Yeah.
And we don't want to cause any additional complications with your Wi-Fi. So a wired solution is always going to be more reliable and is always going to be a higher quality. So how are we going to control all this equipment? You have two video switchers, a hardware switcher, a software switcher. You have an audio console. When we get a little bit further down, we'll find out that there's one computer that is working with the audio console, one computer that's working for vMix. There could be a third computer that is there to play back video and still frame clips and audio clips. There could be another computer that is handling the outbound stream and maybe even monitoring the stream coming back in for confidence. And that could be your Zoom, that could also be your YouTube. So you have a number of computers, and in order to kind of simplify all of that and maybe reduce the number of people operating these things, providing an automation system that, such as a Stream Deck, which is has a small panel with a whole bunch of programmable buttons with soft keys that label them. And Crystal is showing her new box. She must have just gotten one in. I know Mark has one, and I have one sitting here on my desk as well. They're very popular. They're easy to program. They're very flexible. They can control lots and lots and lots of hardware, and they can even control software and computers. So something like that makes it really easy to handle multiple functions at the push of a single button. And here we're listing kind of the functions that will be needed that these various computers will be needed to do. Software video switching, primary streaming, local video recording, Zoom switching, stream confidence, which is monitoring the stream coming back, chat monitoring, video playback, still image playback, local audio recording, sound mixer software, and remote controls. That's a lot of functions.
And why 1A versus 1 on those last two?
Yeah. Oh, it's one audio. So all of these are video functions over here. These two are audio functions, right? So it's
Okay.
1, 2, 3, maybe 4 computers dedicated to video and streaming, and one computer dedicated to audio. Now,
Okay.
you know, you may not need to have all of these computers separated, but you want to think about the functions and think about the load that you're asking
Right.
each computer to perform. So if you have a really, really powerful computer, it might be capable of doing multiple functions. If you have less expensive computers, maybe not so, right? So you might have multiple computers. And these days, there are these miniature computers, like really small, like that big, right? I don't happen to have one here to show you. We talked about these a little while back. They're available from a few different manufacturers. For Mark is showing one.
Okay.
For well under $1,000 each, right? Very, very capable computers. And even the Raspberry Pi, which is like $100, is a capable computer to do certain things. So we're not talking about desktops, powerful desktops. We're not talking about, you know, gaming laptops, not for all of these functions. Monitor screens for your computers. You want to make sure that you have plenty of screens. I'm sitting here with two 27-inch monitors here. Crystal has 3. I have another computer to my right that has a 43-inch widescreen curved computer and a 15-inch computer monitor sitting on top of that. Why? Because I've got a lot of windows open here, and I could use more monitors in front of me right here because I've got like 6 windows open on my right computer and 4 windows open on my left computer. There's a lot going on here. Okay, so we can skip over. We talked about software. We can skip over equipment racking. You have a rack in the front of the room that we think is sufficient. I don't think you're going to need a rack in the back of the room, but you will need some kind of a control desk. So you have all this equipment, and you don't want to put them on folding desks, folding tables. It doesn't look good. You won't have the space you need. You won't be able to arrange them properly, and they won't be secure. So you can look on the internet and look up media control desks, look up church control desks. People are building their own. You can find lots of diagrams and pictures and even plans for building control desks. And since you're going to be utilizing what was a raised stage, and that's a good thing because you're already elevated and you'll be able to see over people's heads even when they're standing. It makes sense to build in a control area that is going to be ergonomic and comfortable for you to use. And so that people in the room won't be looking back at all the backside of all of this equipment. It just makes for a nice, neat installation.
Okay, good
So
point.
that is the end of our document and the end of our recommendations. So let me get to the diagram. Yeah, the diagram.
Okay.
Crystal?
I was going to jump in a couple of things. First of all, with regard to computers, I find that having more monitors spares you the need to have quite as strong or as many of systems. I manage to run almost everything from where I'm at with 3 screens on a machine that is admittedly a gaming computer. So keep that in mind. It is above the standard, but it is definitely capable of doing everything. With the exception of the in sanctuary, which Rob handles and then streams to me. So the other thing I would say with regard to mounting and creating a desk, I don't know if you have an IKEA near you. If you do, IKEA hack desks
I was
are
literally going to
brilliant.
say IKEA.
Brilliant IKEA hack
Thank
desks,
you.
because you can
Yes.
you can take the standard desk from IKEA and put a coffee table on top of it and then mount shelves on the thing. I've done it 3 times. It's brilliant.
And you could even skirt the back of it with some fabric so that you don't see all the wires and crap.
Yeah, there's
Right.
so many different great ways to do it, and do it on the cheap. So
And I've done that.
Well,
Love IKEA.
it looks like a whole area we're going to need to look into. And quite honestly, what we may have done is something custom constructed, because you would be amazed what comes out of these little shops around here.
Oh, awesome.
having been to Tijuana, no, I bet for sure
Yeah.
there's some awesome stuff.
There's some mighty craftsmanship going on down there.
For real.
Marty, we need a site visit.
We
visit.
do. I will go there just so long as you hook me up with tacos. Okay.
Awesome.
Not a problem.
And tequila.
Diagram. Oh, we lost the diagram, Marty. Were you sharing?
Yeah,
it?
no, I thought we'd take a break here and open up for discussion and questions and such.
Yep.
I see there's some stuff coming in on the chat, on the Zoom
I
chat.
had to ask for a clarification on a question from
Oh,
someone.
okay.
Actually, that was just a statement. She was responding
No,
to
and
the
then there was another question that she asked afterwards that about a Zoom camera, but I did not understand the question.
Okay.
Well,
Are there any questions in the Discord, or any panelists have any
what I'm
comments to
talking
add?
about.
Mhm.
So Keith Miller asked a question about, he said, what frequency range and dynamic range does Zoom transmit under best conditions?
There's a good question. I have not tested it. But I believe that provided that you have all the right boxes checked for audio, for original sound, it will go out to at least 8K, if not 12, at the top end, at the high frequencies. I have heard Zoom music played over Zoom sound mighty good, but I couldn't tell you what the numbers are. I haven't tested it.
Yeah, I haven't been able to locate anything on that either, although I did find a really interesting study that was comparing the audio quality of classical music and live music over Zoom, Microsoft Teams, voice lessons, and Apple FaceTime, and they found that Zoom was the best one that had original sound on. So keep in mind the original sound is really your big deal there.
Leo, do you have any experience in that? Have you tried anything?
I couldn't tell you which is better. As Crystal said, however, I can say that they've all upped their game. But the biggest single thing when you're talking about it is the good input, good quality mics, good quality mixing. Particularly, actually, I tell you, going back to something you said earlier, Marty, that works very well when you're streaming, is turn stereo on if you're going to use music, because it does separate, as you say. It just adds an extra lane of traffic that you're going out, and so you're literally doubling the amount of traffic going out. So there is separation, and you can hear a big difference.
Is that what Keith's question was? I totally didn't read it as a musical question.
I thought it more went towards the frequency response of Zoom and maybe the noise component of Zoom. What kind of dynamic range could you anticipate getting out of Zoom? And I don't have, I believe that Zoom is likely at least 7500 8K in terms of top end bandwidth, and maybe higher than that. There certainly there are audio codecs that go out to 14, 15K. I'm off the top of my head. I don't have codec standards off the top of my head to say who does
Define a
what.
codec real quick for the folks that don't know what a codec is.
Well, a codec. So when we're putting this content on the network, we're encoding it, and so that we can maximize the bandwidth. We're squishing it so we can put more information over the available bandwidth, and then at the other end we decode it.
Yep.
So digital audio you know, I would say not. Sometimes we do things uncompressed, but when we're putting audio information on the network using any of these UC clients, whether it's Zoom or Teams or Google or whatever, there is a codec. So we're doing compression and decompression, and there's and again, there are defined codecs, and they incur different amounts of loss. There are lossy codecs. There are ways to encode where you have little or no loss. But so at any rate, there are standards for these. For example, video codecs that talk to each other, they have to be running on the same standard in order for them to properly operate back and forth. So these are, without going any more down the rabbit hole, I don't know off the top of my head what these specs are. A simple Google search didn't pop them up. It would be worth knowing, you know, what Zoom claims and whether or not it delivers.
Crystal? You're muted.
But if you weren't,
Thank you. I did find that it says they're supporting HD voice by using Silk and Opus codecs.
Okay, Opus is it's a pretty high-end codec.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the frequency? Is that
They do not give that.
okay?
Well, now, yeah, so codecs are capable of a maximum frequency range. They can be restricted as well. Now, but there's another aspect to this. All the different adjustments that are available in Zoom, high quality audio, stereo audio,